Hello. Hello there. I am so happy to be here. And it's 12:30 on Thursday, which is going to be the new time that I'm up and at 'em and talking with you. So this is the first of my Thursday Facebook Lives. It's 12:30 here in sunny LA, and that's when I'm going to be doing these. And they're going to be based on my blog. So hopefully you are signed up to get those, and you got today's. And today's was a little different because it was much longer. So normally I like to give you a short, sweet, good tip or idea about losing weight, keeping it off, all that good stuff. But today I did a bunch of research on hormones, and I sent you that blog. So check it out. It is about 5 hormones and how they contribute to weight gain, particularly in midlife. So I'd love you to take a look at that. Today what we're going to discuss is just one of those hormones. We're going to discuss estrogen. So I just want to do something to make sure this is working. So estrogen. I am Stephanie Fein, Dr. Stephanie Fein. I'm a trained internist, and I've been helping people lose weight and keep it off, which to me is the most important piece, for almost 2 decades now. I've also lost 50 pounds, and I've kept it off for a decade, more than a decade. So I have some experience around this, and I love to talk to people about this. So I'm really glad you're here. Now, the first thing, I have my computer here. This is why you're going to see me going back and forth. The first thing I want to talk about is estrogen, and I want to talk about the basics. So the basics of estrogen are these. It's a female hormone. It's made in the ovaries, and it's responsible for most of the estrogen in your body and your periods, when they come and go, and they're linked to progesterone. Those are the main ones. There certainly are others involved. When you are not premenstrual, but when you're menstruating, that's what I mean to say, your hormones work together. So, and you have regular periods, and everything's working. Now, obviously there are differences, but we're just talking about generally. So when, as you approach middle age, there's a period called perimenopause. So that's before menopause. Menopause is technically defined as 12 months with no period. So not until you reach that 12th month with no period do you realize you just went through menopause, which I always thought was a very funny way of doing it. But anyway, that's the actual definition. So as you can imagine, estrogen, unless you have surgery to remove ovaries, then you go into, menopause like that. I mean, that happens right away. But usually what happens if you don't have surgery is that the estrogen dwindles. Progesterone is affected too, but it dwindles. So at first, it separates and declines relative to progesterone. So you see that the way the hormones were working before, it's not working as perfectly. So for 5 to 10 years before you will even, before you will even hit menopause, before you'll get any symptoms of menopause, you will start to feel perimenopausal symptoms. And that can be estrogen excesses. So feeling like you have increased estrogen, but that's relative to the progesterone. So it really has to do with how those two hormones are uncoupling, okay? And with increased estrogen, those symptoms can be irregular bleeding. So as you're hitting midlife, you could be getting longer time between your periods. You could be getting excessive bleeding, that sort of thing. So funny bleeding, especially in midlife. Also, what you can experience are mood swings, and in perimenopause in particular, it's more depression. In menopause, there might be some anxiety. The truth is, it could be both. So it depends on your body, right? All these things just depend on your body. Hi, Valerie. So good to see you. So that's what starts happening 5 to 10 years later, before menopause. Now, we're talking about estrogen decline. So by the time you're not having any periods, you're getting very little estrogen. and it happens in a slope, right? So it's happening over time. And the menopause itself has, as you may well know, hot flashes, night sweats, irritability, changes in libido, all that sort of stuff is happening again in this perimenopause and then at the end towards menopause. Those are important things to note. Here's what I really want to tell you. It does not have to be terrible. Okay, so as a physician, I only heard about all the terrible complaints, and I was like, this is going to be awful. The truth is, I started collecting stories of people who had a perfectly fine menopausal transition, barely any symptoms. So I'm just telling you that to know that it's possible that you may have it with nary a symptom, or if you have one, it can be minimal or last a very short amount of time. So I just wanted to put that out there in the universe, that it does not have to be a terrible, tragic, insomniac, time. Now, that being said, for some of us it is. So, and those would be due to estrogen decline. Okay, and that is the main symptom that we're talking about here. And that's what I want to talk about when I'm referring to weight gain and fat with estrogen. Okay, again, in the blog, I went over 5 of the hormones, and here I am just talking about one. So you can go to the blog and you can look at that. I hear something in the background. I'm sure you do too. So let's see. Oh, this is an interesting piece I wanted to remind you of. So the ovaries are making most of the estrogen when you are premenopausal. When you're postmenopausal and your ovaries are no longer making the estrogen, guess what is? Fat cells. Isn't that amazing? I find that incredible. We used to think that fat cells were just these like little holders of stuff. They do so much, and a lot of it is stuff we don't want. Now, some of it is stuff we do want, right? It's going to be energy holder storing, but a lot of it is stuff we don't want. And that's the stuff that we don't want. This is the stuff we're talking about. So when postmenopausal women, so you're done with your periods, when you have weight, extra weight, you have more estrogen in your system. Now, for some, that sort of blunts some of the symptoms that can come with it, not in a great degree, but it also is a risk factor for certain cancers that are promoted by estrogen. So breast cancer, endometrial cancer, ovarian cancers. So women who are overweight or obese are at greater risk of those postmenopausally. Okay? It's such an important piece of information to me. There's preventing weight gain in midlife, so perimenopausally and menopausally, is so important for so many reasons, including this increased risk of breast cancer and endometrial cancer. So keeping the weight off and getting it off is really key. Okay, so I'm just going to be harping on that all the time. So there's many reasons for us, not only for looking good in jeans, but for your health. Okay, here is my very favorite. Oh, I want to make sure I said that your risk goes down if you lose weight. Okay, right? Because if those fat cells aren't promoting estrogen production, then they're gone and they're not doing that. So if you are overweight and are at an increased risk, you can decrease your risk by losing the weight. Okay, so there's something we can do. I always love that. So that's an important piece to know. So let's talk more specifically about estrogen and fat. And in the research I did, it was very fascinating. I enjoyed spending the time doing this, but I could not find really definitive information in studies. Even I looked at rat studies that showed that estrogen decline leads directly to weight gain. So it doesn't. It's not that estrogen goes down and weight gain goes up. There is absolutely evidence that postmenopausal women gain fat over time. But there's many explanations for that, and estrogen itself is not the only reason. Okay, so that's what I wanted definitely people to know, that estrogen decline is not the only reason that there's weight gain, and in fact, it's indirect. Now, what estrogen does do, estrogen decline, is change the fat distribution. That's really important. It ends up being really important. So what I mean by that is, this is amazing again, is you will accumulate fat in your abdomen and viscerally, which means around your organs. So you get that sort of middle. That's why we talk about, managing your middle. Even if you stay the same weight. So it literally changes where you hold your fat. The idea here, so I wanted to understand that. The idea there is that because there's estrogen decline, testosterone that you have in your body, there's a proportion change there too, right? Because now you have less estrogen, and your body is changing to a different size. Like, women sort of curvy, and men just sort of can be round. That our bodies are literally changing to be more like men, which is so it's not my favorite, but that's sort of the idea. The other sort of support for that is that your risk goes up for the things that men are at risk for too. What I mean by that is once women are postmenopausal, after menopause, then once women are postmenopausal, their risk for cardiovascular disease, heart attacks, starts to match those of men. It never quite gets there, but it goes up. And with estrogen, we were protected. So, and part of that may be, it's hard to know which comes first, but this changing in body type, where the visceral fat comes. Okay. So now we know with estrogen decline, you can get abdominal fat. There's two things with that. One is that puts you at increased risk of insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, and diabetes. Now, the diabetes is like way far at the end. Certainly not everyone gets diabetes, but women at postmenopausally, if they're gaining weight and having this redistribution and not doing anything about it, can start to get metabolic syndrome and insulin resistance. Those things then also put you at increased risk. Again, hard to know which comes first. The metabolic syndrome, the insulin resistance, the fat, it's the estrogen decline, it sort of all happens at the same time. But what I want you to know about that is there's something to be done. Okay, so this isn't inevitable. I mean, it is if you sat down on your butt all day long and did nothing, said goodbye at 50 and just sat around. But if you do moderate exercise, and what I mean by that is not like spinning every day for an hour and a half, although more power to you if your body's already in there, but as long as you're doing consistent moderate exercise, it preferentially burns the abdominal fat. Okay, so you can directly do something about the abdominal visceral fat by making sure you're moving. Now this gets into a whole bunch of the other stuff, and I'm actually, there will be a video on my website, stephaniefeinmd.com, about metabolism, and that ties into muscle. And that's actually the key here, is that what's happening when we're getting fat redistribution as we age is our muscle is changing too. And that's age-related. Again, there's something we can do about it. Okay, so staying active, just get it in your brain right now, no matter where you are on the timeline of life, that you are going to be active and you're going to make sure to build muscle. That will make a big difference. Honestly, big difference. Also, knowing all this and making sure that you're keeping your weight in check, right, and not just letting it sort of go, will really make a big difference too. Okay, and that's what I'm here for. And that is, I'm so passionate about that for you. So that's what we're working on. Okay, so we talked about the estrogen fat redistribution. What we didn't talk about specifically was the insulin resistance. I'll just talk about this and then I'll let you go, because I'm very concerned about your time. I want to give you some good information, but I also don't want to keep you too long. The fat, visceral fat, the abdominal fat, people also call it belly fat, is more, it looks like it's also either responsible, again, hard to know which comes first, but that insulin resistance is related to it. Insulin, that's another hormone I did talk about in the blog, so you could go check it out there. But I'm going to touch on it here because it's so important. Insulin levels, if they're higher at baseline, meaning you're having a lot of insulin in your body, can then lead to abdominal fat. And then if your estrogen's going down, you're getting more abdominal fat, and you see how that can sort of grow on each other. One of the ways to keep your insulin levels sort of in check is to not have huge doses of donuts, of sugary flour, so refined sugar, refined flour, that sort of thing, like big bowls of pasta, then you're getting spikes up and down. If you're having vegetables are carbs too, but they have fiber, they have water, so they take longer to digest. The insulin doesn't spike like that. It takes its time because it's using it as it's digesting it. So any time that you can include vegetables, fruits, anything with skins, anything like that, proteins too. So the glucose is from carbohydrates, fruits, vegetables, grains, that sort of stuff. Making sure you don't have enormous portions of things and that there's a variety. And then if you watch the refined flour and sugar, it really will make a difference. So that's talking directly to the insulin, which is talking to the abdominal fat, which is also talking about the estrogen because of the redistribution to the abdominal fat. Whew! We did it! So that's just a little bit of estrogen and fat, weight gain, and that sort of thing. My favorite fact about that was that its estrogen decline is not directly related to weight gain. It's fat redistribution. So, and remember, something to do about it, moderate exercise. If you could do it every day, you're a superstar. So, that was it. I'm going to see you next Thursday, because next Thursday there's going to be another blog, and there's going to be another Facebook Live. So thank you, love you. And if you haven't joined the Facebook group, then join it. It's a free Facebook group, and it's at planforpossible.com. If you just put in planforpossible.com, you can join right there. So I'm really happy to be here. Thank you so much for being here with me, and I will see you next week. Bye.